Hello, this is Tiia, your host for the Writing Diary. And this podcast is my journey log of getting back into writing after a 15-year-long hiatus. On Saturday, something exciting happened. A book arrived here that I had ordered the Monday before. And the story how I found this book is even more exciting. To give you a bit of context, I am writing on this cosmic horror story playing in 1923 in Germany. You can't write about this time without acknowledging that this was post-World War I, and many people still suffering from what happened just a few years before. You also can't ignore that there had been an economic hardship and that, Germany was on the brink of sliding into fascism. Men who had never seen bigger wars before returned to their families when they were lucky enough and had to live with the aftermath of the war. In order to research this, I had to deep dive into the time and the mindset of the time and the people. And last week, Jan from my Discord shared a site named Bookbot, which is a company sitting in Prague who's selling second and third hand books. So if you have books you no longer need, you can sell them to them and they will resell them to someone else, often for just a little price compared to the new price, or other second-hand bookstores. So actually pretty affordable. The reason that they can be so low priced is probably because they sell so many books in such a great amount that it's worth it in the end. So they have a search, and in that search you can search for the age of the book or the publication. And I looked for anything interesting in their category on there that was 100 years and older. The reason for that is because I really like old books, and they had a few books there that interested me. But then I reached page 3 of the search, and it was almost as if it was put there just for me. You see, one of my characters in the book was part of a battle in France, in Arras. And while there's a lot I researched online about this topic, it's generally something that is reduced to dates, to numbers of deaths and survivors. But there's, of course, rarely a report on what has really happened, how the people have felt, what they saw. And it is over 100 years ago after all, so everyone who participated there is now already dead. Reports of soldiers are maybe hidden in journals kept or already disposed by their families. But there it was, the Battle of Arras, a book from 1918 with over 350 pictures made by the soldiers themselves, or rather their war journalists. All pictures with source, date and location. And for the first time, I saw the real locations of my short story. I saw the faces of the sometimes still teenagers in the trenches, tired, dirty and scared. People of injured soldiers, pictures of German and French soldiers holding small talk over the barbed wire fence, pictures of street dogs in the trenches keeping the soldiers company, crashed airplanes, zeppelins and destroyed villages, farms and churches. Taking a historical event and placing a story within it as a fantastical element sometimes needs these experiences of grounding. To make ourselves clear that when we use these events, we're building upon people's life stories and using them as a decoration for our own narrative. And there's a responsibility that comes with this, our responsibility how to tell the story, how to frame the people and which statements we make. Ethical writing isn't just important in journalism, but also in fictional storytelling. You have the responsibility as soon as you intend to make your writing accessible for others. And while I was aware of all of this, and while my grandfather himself fought in World War I as a young adult, seeing the faces in those photographs, seeing the destruction left behind by the battles, and in the aftermath reading the life stories of the people in the pictures, it refreshed that thought that I need to be respectful with people's past and experiences, even if they don't live anymore, because my narrative might shape people's view on real-life events. I said in an earlier episode how research is the most fun part in writing for me. I love getting down rabbit holes to the point I'm so knowledgeable about something that my storytelling could almost be from someone who lived in that time. And for me, this is something I need to do to feel comfortable telling the story. But for things like horror stories, especially if they involve real-life tragic events, or in this case wars, this makes it mentally very taxing. I think it's a little bit comparable to method actors that purposefully put themselves through hardship to be able to express said hardship in their acting. And for me, I feel like it enhances and completes my knowledge about things, which doesn't only help me with writing, but in general, to see patterns in real life and to understand human behavior and actions. But like I said, it is taxing, and I dreamt 2 nights in a row about these pictures, the war, the people talking, even the smells and the noises. But I think this is a process I need to go through in order to tell a story that feels real and alive. This experience to hold the book in my hands that was older than the time my story played in, a book that my characters could have in their bookshelf, that was a little bit like a link to the story that I felt I needed. Another one is my plan to travel to the place my story plays in order to experience some of the impressions myself. It may sound weird, all that just for a short story, but I want to do it right. I want to make sure I get it as right as possible and I don't overlook something or portray it in a way that seems unreasonable, at least from the historical context. Everything else, the horror and the fantastic part, really is fair play, and I can let my brain come up with things. But I said already before, for me, it is super important to get the things right that are borrowed from reality. I want people to be able to feel like as they were thrown into that time when reading my story. And the way I approach research is usually different. Sometimes I already have something, a book, an artifact, or a situation that inspires my brain to write the story. And then I go on the internet, I deep dive, or just use the thing that I already have to continue, and that's enough. For the story, I try to utilize all ways possible to get it right. And even if that story is never read by anyone else but me, then I know I have done my best to write it. The fact that this book was in that online store on page 3, right at the time I looked at it, then I saw it, I directly felt like it was a sign from the universe for me that I'm on the right path. And that was kind of mind-blowing because of all of the books that were published 100 years ago, of all of the books that could have been on that website run from Prague, it was this exact book about this exact topic that had been keeping my brain busy for months now. How do you approach research in your stories? Do you research at all? Do you have an indiscriminating Google search history? I rarely talk about this topic with other writers, so I don't know how others do it. I know bigger writers have research assistants who do the research for them, and when I first saw this, I felt like that must be a dream job, really. But smaller authors, how far do they usually go to immerse themselves into the topic to be able to write about it? Is it rabbit holing like I did, or is it maybe only just looking up dates and hoping to get it right? Maybe it's like with most things in writing that there is no right or wrong, and maybe there is not one approach to do it. Maybe it's one of these infamous, well, it depends. I've been sitting here reading through this book, looking at the pictures, especially those pictures that are from that exact battle my story is talking about. And one thing that surprised me was how accurate my imagination of how it may have looked and like the whole mood that I had transferred into my story, how much it was fitting with the pictures that I saw. It just gave me the feeling that I had done my initial research the right way, and that a lot of things that I found that were maybe not from the same place that I talked about, but that happened at the same time, that they translated really well into my storytelling as well. And my plan on traveling to the spot where my story mainly plays, it's not because I want to be at a historical place and be able to describe this place in detail, because ultimately my story plays in a fictional place in a specific area. So that fictional place doesn't exist. It could be basically any place, any old German village in that area. But for me, it's important to maybe like feel the energy at that place, because while I position my story in a real world region, the thing is that this region has been infamous for all kind of mysterious things. So this region is already very loaded with all kind of phenomena and unexplainable things happening there. So for me, I don't know what I'm expecting from going there. I don't know what I will experience going there, especially because I have been there before. So it's not like it's the first time I would go there, but I always looked back, and maybe this is also why I have been choosing that place for my story to begin with. It has been a very inspiring visit the first time I was there, which is many, many years ago. It has been a very inspiring visit for me. I already felt the connection to this place and to this region. So going back and maybe going there with different expectations than the first time, because the first time I just went there because it was like a planned trip that I had been looking forward to. There was no background story why we went there. It was just close by, and we just wanted to spend the day there. And I was unprepared for how much of a deep impression the place would have on me. And going back with, first of all, this background story of the impression it had on me, and then second of all, with this very loaded story that I am writing, I hope for a little bit more sensory input to make my story even more believable. And yes, while I'm joking, well, all this just for a short story, let's be honest, it's not just for the short story. It is to fill my brain with and fill my mind with impressions that may shape my thinking and that may shape my writing in the future. Because I feel very comfortable in my writing right now. I feel very comfortable in my, well, I don't want to really say my universe in which I am basically settling down, because it's a little bit borrowed and it's a little bit my own. It's a little bit patchwork, but I feel very comfortable in it right now. And I would imagine that I continue to write in that universe and I continue to place my stories there. And the more I can input from the time and from the different regions I'm writing about, the more input I can have, the more complete the picture is going to be. So it is a loaded plan on researching. It is partially because of my story. It is partially because of my own interest. But for me, it still is research. And like with a book that just showed up, it just feels right. It just feels like a little nudge from the universe to push me into this direction. If you want to tell me how you research and how you organize it, please feel free to write it in the comments on the platform you're listening this on. Or you join the Discord and join the conversation over there, as we have a lot of writers there as well that look for an exchange, me included. And the invitation link you can find in the show notes. And I'm excited every time I can share a moment like this with you, because it shows me that my journey going back to writing is so much more than simply just writing and publishing. The whole aspect of exploration, these kind of things, gets me overly excited about the future of my writing. And while this episode is maybe a little bit shorter than usual, as I'm knee deep in some other work this week, I really hope to be able to hear from you and see you maybe even in my working streams on Twitch or on our Discord. So, thank you for listening. I hope we meet again next week. Have a wonderful week. Bye.